Hey guys, I'm Jackie Brubaker, host of the Love You Even More podcast. I'm an author, marriage and family therapist in training, performer, and 2-time Emmy Award winner. Each week, I bring on people from all walks of life to talk to them about their inspiring stories in the fields of self-development, relationships, business, and how you can love yourself even more. For more about me and the podcast, visit us at loveyouevenmore.com. I am so excited to have Arlene Washburn on the podcast today. Arlene Washburn is a leader in the matchmaking industry, a matchmaker and science-based dating and relationship coach with some fairy tale success. She's one of only 12 Master Executive Certified Matchmakers, the former CEO of the oldest state licensed school for matchmaking in America, and an award-winning expert voted the most innovative woman in relationship matchmaking for 2022. She founded AV Connections in 2012 to offer top-level dating and relationship coaching, matchmaking, and singles events for elite singles. Her keen intuition and adept recruitment skills have won Arlene widespread acclaim for her matchmaking and relationship coaching across multiple channels. She's focused on the science and research of love and follows the latest dating trends. Arlene provides singles with the resources they need to make better partner choices, stop relationship sabotage, self-sabotage, and navigate relationships more effectively. Hello, Arlene, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jacqueline. I've been so looking forward to this conversation.
You are a lovely human being. We had a lovely chat the other day, and I got to know you better, and you've accomplished so much, as we all just heard. But you are friends with Tim Ash, who was just here last week, and Tim is fantastic. I love his book, Primal Dating, and I just want to kind of get into one of the things that became sort of like a sticking point, which is dating after 40 for men or women. We can focus on women, but really dating after 40 is very different for a man versus a woman. And what Tim was saying is that, when we think about evolution, that's when people would naturally stop having kids and probably be closer to death back in the day, right? People were dying. So what a nice life till 40. But obviously we are living so much longer and we are having kids way into our 40s. And as you just mentioned, Janet Jackson had a child at 50, which is incredible to me. Wow. But I'd love to know your opinion on what that means from a biological standpoint, but also from a societal standpoint and where people are at, since you have got such a pulse on that as a premier matchmaker and dating coach, and you get this. So I'd really love to know your opinion.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And I think that's a great topic to begin with. I'm not a matchmaker. I teach matchmaking, but I do keep up on the dating trends and follow the science and the research. And it's unfortunate, but evolutionary psychology has not kept up with how quickly things are changing in our society. Mm-hmm. Therefore, what society is doing and all the constructs that used to be there that have now been sort of dissipated, they're so misaligned. And also, there's always, I would say there's always the unicorn or the snowflake in terms of, what the norm is or what what evolutionary psychology is. For example, people dating after a certain age, there are people who look younger. There are people who've taken care of themselves. So a lot of it applies in the majority, but doesn't mean across the board. And I still believe that there's a lid to every pot. And I like to say, from a personal standpoint, I met my husband when I was 45.
Oh, thank God. Thank you, Jesus. All right, go on.
And when I was a matchmaker, I worked with a New York Times bestselling author. She was a dating coach and a physician, a functional medicine doctor. And I had introduced her to a client of mine. He only met her, she only met him. And she got married for the first time at the age of 60. And they're still happily married. So I don't think people should ever give up on love or ever give up on any of their plans unless biology takes over or life takes over, something that is out of your control, but never give up on your dreams and what you want to do.
Yeah, because I really feel like at this point too, people are learning so much more about themselves and going to therapy and doing self-development and like really understanding themselves and relationships so much more than we ever have, that a lot of marriages are happening later because people are finally picking the right person for them versus, oh, I'm 25 and you just make me like bubbly and happy, I'll marry you.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's important that we are learning so much more about relationships. I don't think you have to wait to learn before you get into a relationship. And I don't mean that across the board. What I mean is there's a lot that you can continue to learn as you are in a relationship, and the relationship itself will guide where you focus, right? Because if you have a genuine desire to have a healthy relationship, I mean, I go through it. I've been with my husband over 15 years, but still there's stuff that comes up. And because I'm in this space, I research and I pause and I try to figure out how to handle it in the best possible way, because I don't want to be with anybody else. And according to what he says to me, he doesn't either. So I think there's two things. Yes, learn as much as you can about relationships before you actually are in one, but also remember that you can be in one and continue to learn.
That is such an important point, because you really learn so much more about yourself while in a relationship, because the mirror is there. You are truly getting the mirror to yourself. And whenever you're triggered, guess what? That is truly something in you that is not healed. And you can only get that with a partner.
Absolutely. And I think you know this better than anyone, studying psychology and all of that. I think that with the choices that people are making later in life, what I hope for is that they're not looking for a partner to be everything to them. And I think this is where there's a big problem in our society today, that because women, for example, are no longer needing a man for financial reasons, right? There's a different set of criteria that they're looking for. But it's important to contain it to something that is reasonable, because one person cannot be everything to you. Same with the men.
Yeah.
You own a business, you're successful, you want your wife to be a part of that business, you want your wife to be a great mother, you want your wife to be a great lover, all the things. And I think it's very important to learn to compartmentalize, because it's too much for one person to fulfill all these things in your life. And you should have a life. You should have other avenues where you can get some of your needs met. That is not always your partner. So hold off, make sure you have your, must-haves, your deal breakers, and that should be a limited amount. However, please be mindful of not trying to get everything from one person, because it's just not realistic.
It's not realistic. And I completely agree with that. It's interesting. So my mom she's in her later years. I'll say that, because I think she'd be like, don't say my age. She's in her later years. And my stepfather passed away 2 years ago. They were together for decades. And she's like, I want to date, but I also really like having all of my everything for myself now. I'm like, yeah, it's nice. It's really nice to have some autonomy and to do whatever you want, but she still wants a partner. And I think no matter what age that is, like, that still comes up. And to your point of like, they can't be your everything, especially at different ages. If she was to meet someone, they wouldn't have to get married. They wouldn't have to think about a lot of things that younger couples would, like getting married, having a kid, like buying a house, like setting up their financial future. It's very different to be at certain ages and then to assess, what do I actually want from this partner?
Yeah. I mean, I do think that even when you're older, that, marriage is a contract. And what it does is it covers a lot of ground. If, God forbid, your significant other ends up in a hospital and you've been living together and you've had these bed talk conversations about what you would want if you end up in a coma or something like that, if you don't have paperwork in place, then the family comes in, they do what they think but they're not doing what you want them to do. And your significant other, who's been with you for X number of years, no longer has a say in it because of the fact that you're not married. So
Right.
I do think that marriage is still important. You know, you pay more. I always say you have the singles tax. Like, it's more costly not to be married. And it is a document that covers a lot of ground, and it's just a contract.
Yeah.
It's not more love. It doesn't mean more commitment. It just means you're shoring things up. So I do believe in the institution of marriage, and I'm super grateful that I'm married. I think I get a lot of benefits out of that. But the other thing is, there are a lot of people, including women, especially women, I should say, that are very happily single, that are very fulfilled. They have a large group of friends and relationships, which is the thing that maintains your health and your vitality and all that, is just having these relationships. And they're happy. They get to do things with their friends. They may or may not want sex, especially if you've gone through menopause. You may be at a stage in your life where you feel like, I'm not saying everybody who goes through menopause doesn't want sex, but some people are like, yeah, I've been there, done it. I'm fine without it. Or I'm using my own, I'm doing this on my own, right?
Right.
And it's all very healthy. And in fact, men benefit more from being married because they live longer, they make more money, et cetera, et cetera. So I am a believer in the institution of marriage, relationships, putting people together, having been a matchmaker and training matchmakers today. But I also do believe that if you are happily single, don't question yourself like you're crazy, because you're not. There are people who are happily single and are making an active choice to be in that stage in their lives, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think there's still, and maybe this is just my own personal belief, but I am seeing this with my mom. There's this like tug, like this push pull of like, is it okay for me to just really give up on love and be like happily single? Because there is so much opportunity and it could look so different. But I think societal wise, I think, especially with women, and you're right, men do live longer with us. They do benefit from marriage more than we do.
Yeah.
There is this like, and maybe this is the fairy tale we've been like kind of sold to always have a partner. And if you don't, maybe something's wrong with you, but it doesn't seem that way at all. It's really just the choice. And I think we have more choice than ever these days.
Absolutely. The caution that I do want to put out there for young women, because it's different if you've already been married, you've had children, you have your own assets, and you're pretty squared away, except that there's no significant other, and you're perfectly okay with that because you have this great group of friends that are very fulfilling. You travel with them, you do stuff together, and quite frankly, if not to be vulgar, but if you want to get laid, you can do that too, because it's very easy for a woman to, just have random sex, because men usually don't turn that down. So, however, if you are a young woman and you have a priority in your life to someday get married and have children, you do need to look at timelines, because it's important, because it affects your ability to get pregnant. And yes, women are having kids in their at 50, which I don't know how fair that is for the child, to be honest with you. Although having a child, and there's studies that show that grandmothers who raise young children release certain hormones and stay young longer. But having said that, I think you can have everything. It just needs to be integrated, and you should consider the strategic timeline that's going to work best for you. And also, don't take yourself out of the market for the sake of doing it, or because you're prioritizing education, you're prioritizing a business or whatever, because they're not mutually exclusive. You actually can have a relationship, and if you have the right partner, they're going to encourage you. They're going to help you.
Right.
If they're a drudgery, if you've had a series of bad relationships, then you're afraid to be in a relationship while you're doing something else, because you think, oh my God, if I pick another guy like that, or another woman like that for that matter, but they're not mutually exclusive. And men don't have this dilemma, the whole burden of a timeline, a biological clock ticking. They don't have that burden. Who was it? I forget his name. He just had a child at the age of 80. Like there's an asymmetry between men and women. Robert De Niro.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, it's bonkers, right? So
Yeah.
there is a huge asymmetry, and I'm sure Tim Ash talked about it, and it's very prevalent in his book, that men's stock keeps going up. They get more interesting. Honestly, from my opinion, I always like guys that had the little gray hair or whatever. Now that my husband has it, he's mostly a blonde, but I'm like, he's so much better looking now than when he was younger, in my opinion.
I agree.
They have assets, they have intelligence and success. To me, that's more attractive and more appealing. Whereas with women, it's difficult to maintain that. And I've never had plastic surgery in my life. I'm not, I'm all for it if you want to have it, but I'll be 59 this year, and I have the good fortune of having my mom's, genetics.
Because you got good genes, girl.
Thank you.
You too.
Yeah, but things change, right? And, men are visual, even in their 80s. They'll still turn around for a beautiful 20-something-year-old. They can't help it. We're visual too, but in a very different way, and we have other priorities. So I guess my point is not to scare anyone. It's just, do not make having a relationship and getting married and having children, if that is what you want, something that, that's over there, I'll do that later after I do this. No, they're not mutually exclusive. Do everything that you need to do and do that as well.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that it is very easy. And you illustrated that so perfectly. Like, I've had a string of bad relationships. I don't want to pick the wrong person and disrupt what I'm working on right here. I mean, that's definitely been me. But if you want a relationship, I mean, time's only going to keep moving. And if you're not open to having someone and to having that balance, it might be a lot if you're doing a lot in your own personal life. But if you really want that, then you need to make the space for it, as you've talked about.
Yeah, I'll tell you from my own personal experience, I was in my 40s when I met my husband. I had been in the pharmaceutical industry for 20 years. We were dating for a relatively short period of time, and I was laid off, and I was a senior director, probably the highest paid person other than the owners in that company. So they laid me off, and it was a blessing for me because honestly, I was ready to go, and maybe that was apparent. But I left there one day, and it was a beautiful summer day. I had a white Mercedes, with the top down, and I drove away with the sun shining. I was like, I felt like the angels lifted a monkey off my back. And then reality kicked in. Oh my God, Arlene, how are you going to pay for your crazy lifestyle with your 4-bedroom house? You and your daughter, 2 people living in a 4-bedroom house in Bergen County with the taxes through the roof and your car, and all this stuff flushed into my head. And I was dating my husband at the time. And I had been thinking of becoming a matchmaker for 5 years. And I said, you know what? I'm going to become a matchmaker. And I sure as heck did it, right? And
you did.
I started talking to my husband, and I said, look, I think I'm going to sell my house because I really want to do this thing, and I don't want to go through all my savings, etc. And he turned around. Now, this is how you know you have the right partner. He says, look, this is my paycheck. This is how much I need. The rest is yours. If you want, I'll move in with you to help you so that you don't have to sell your house. Oh. That was a huge decision for me because I had been a single woman, a single mom, and really didn't bring men around my daughter for the most part, although things had kind of progressed with him. And also giving my key to someone because he moved in with me. But anyway, that worked out. And then he kept saying, we should get married. And I had this mindset of like, well, I've already had kids. I already have my stuff. Why do I need to get married? And he's like, because I really want to solidify this. And I was like, okay, great. Let's get married. So
I love you. Like, sure.
I was like, all right, fine.
Whatever.
The funny thing is, though, I said to him, look, I'm not getting married for right now. I'm getting married forever. Can you do forever? And he would say forever in slow motion. Right. So just before we get to the marriage part, I started my business. This was the person who would show up to all of my events, lay out the carpet for me, because I used to do these red carpet events for matchmaking to build my database. Run around and help me do everything. And when I was going to go see a potential client, he would say, go get him. You got this. He was the wind beneath my wings. And so it almost tears me up because people give up on that because they think, oh, I can only do this while I'm doing this. Anyway, we got married, and 2 months later, I got cancer. And now I was a solopreneur. I didn't have health insurance at that point because my Cobra had, run out, but I was making a go of this thing. And I see a lot of people do this, right? Thank God I got married because my husband had the best freaking insurance you could ever think of. Okay. And so I got through that. I'm fine and everything else. But I'm just saying, I hope this story proves a point that you do not have to have one thing over here, one thing over there, and separate with time, because you can do them at the same time. And if you have the right partner, he's going to help you.
Yeah.
So that's my story. And I hope it really hits home with people.
It really hit home with me. That's for sure. It will. It just, thank you for sharing that. And I'm so glad that you're okay. Obviously it's been a while, but it's just, I think you're right. I think people forget that that's what the whole point is. The whole point is to really find a partner who really loves you and you really love them, not because, the chemistry or the things. And I'm sure that was there, of course, but someone who's truly going to be there with you through sickness and in health. And really support you and what you want to do because they love all of you, not just a version of you. And then also for us to just be vulnerable and open to doing things that are terrifying, I'm going to have this man move in my own house. This is a lot of releasing of power, kind of almost, this is my little domain, and it working out. I think that's a very good point, not just of you can do multiple things at once, which is so true, but mainly I think for so many women, they're so afraid to let someone in and to believe that it could be real.
Yeah.
And I think that story illustrates that.
Yeah. Well, I've coached a lot of women in my career, and they would put a guard up, right? A wall, if you will. And rather than having a filtering system, a set of criteria that was solid, that was meaningful, and they could assess when they met a person if they met these must-haves, these deal breakers, certain values that were important that needed to be aligned. Rather than having that, they just would put a wall up. And I always said to women, look, when you put a wall up, guess who's going to respect that wall? The good guys. Mm-hmm. They're gonna go. The good guys are going to walk away because they're going to respect your boundaries and everything else. The ones that don't give a shit, excuse my language. I hope I'm not to curse on this.
You can swear on this podcast, girl.
But the ones who don't give a shit are the players, are the ones that are challenged by your wall. They're like, oh, you have a wall? We'll see about that. Yeah. And once they get what they want, they leave because they're all about the challenge and they live for it. That's their dopamine, And so I always say, be warm, be loving, be open, but have that filter going on until you fully engage and release into this. I believe in vulnerability, and I think that's wonderful because the fact that you even give someone a shot is being vulnerable, and there's more bravery in vulnerability than there is fear or that you're weak, because I think people associate that word with weakness. No, there's more bravery, there's more strength. However, have that filter before you allow everything to rush in and you now become someone who's in limerence, right? Limerence, and this from a psychology standpoint, where you just have these hormones going through you you're like a drug addict. You don't even know what the heck you're doing, right? You don't want to go into that state unless you've gone through a period of assessment, and do that lovingly and openly, but consciously. Yeah. Right? It's just intentional dating. It's conscious dating. And then once you feel okay, they have met these requirements that I have for myself. If they don't meet them, it doesn't make them a bad person. They're just not your person. Yeah. And the more guys you meet, the closer you are to meeting that one guy. And the last thing I want to say about that is when women were coached by me, they would say, well, Arlene, I'm not desperate. I just, and I'm like, prioritization is not desperation. There's a huge difference. If you have a priority, you have a priority to go to school and get that degree so you can achieve that goal of being able to be a practitioner in an area. That's the same thing. You have a priority to have a relationship that leads to marriage and children, if that's your path. Now, that's not for everybody. And then you're in a relationship. By the way, being in the relationship is a whole other thing. Yeah. Dating is one thing, being in a relationship is another.
Right.
And so prioritizing doesn't mean that you're desperate. And that's the thing that I want people to get out of their heads, because it's often what gets equated. It's like they conflate two things that are totally different.
This is some good stuff. I knew this was going to be great.
Thank you.
Well, you're not a matchmaker anymore. You do train people to be matchmakers. And I kind of want to talk about that, because one of the things that really impressed me is that you focus very much on the science of dating and ethical matchmaking and ethical dating. So can you talk a little bit more about that? And then we're going to get into how you train matchmakers.
Absolutely. I finally saw The Materialist. This is a movie that just came out.
Yes. Oh, is it still in theaters or is it like on streaming?
Well, I was able to rent it on Netflix, and I had to because all of my matchmakers were, had seen it and they were talking about it. And I'm like, okay, let me just watch this movie.
Yeah.
And half the time I just wanted to gag, because a lot of what was portrayed in that movie, I believe it's not good modern matchmaking, first of all. And secondly, it's just not realistic, a lot of it. And we know it's a movie, and I know that people glamorize things. It actually prompted me to write an article. I do articles for daters on LinkedIn. And I wrote an article about the danger of a matchmaker who's burnt out, who is not really into what she's doing, because matchmaking is a calling. And I say that now more than ever, because the people who leave their industry to become matchmakers are so diverse. I've had students that were attorneys, students that were guidance school counselors, therapists, some coaches, like every kind of career that you could imagine. And there's this calling that to go into matchmaking.
Yeah.
And so in that movie, spoiler alert, she introduces a man to a client, and he turned out to be not a good guy. I won't go into the details, so for people who wanted to watch the movie. Now, when she spoke to the guy, she basically carried around this little book where she would interview people and take notes. And I'm sorry, the way I train matchmakers, there's a lot of due diligence that goes into matchmaking. You need to run these people through those databases that tell you whether or not they have a criminal background. You want to know that if they've been in a sex offender list. You want to research their social media, you need to do a digital audit of who this person is, because often they have things online. There's a lot. And then the interviews are way more extensive than her order taking style, which I think a matchmaker who's an order taker is not a good matchmaker. Full stop. You're there to help guide your clients who are already struggling. And I feel like having that psychology background, or having a knowledge about what good relationships are all about, which is why I steer towards science and research, helps, because then you can help guide your clients, because often people don't ask themselves a series of questions that are important to get to the root of what makes them happy in a relationship, who makes a good partner for them. Anyway, so a lot of what they did in that movie was just such a detriment to the matchmaking world, modern matchmaking. Back in the day, it was all a gut feeling, your intuition, and you had the yenta, putting people together, and those people still exist, and some of them are really good. And I don't want to poo-poo instincts and gut feelings. However, there is a lot of data that's available to you. And so she put this woman in a dangerous position. And I will tell you that in my career of well over a decade, I have never heard of any matchmaker who has had a client be in a situation like that. Yeah. This must happen, I'm sure, but I don't know of anybody. And I have trained hundreds of matchmakers, and I know thousands of matchmakers, and not one. At least they haven't volunteered that to me. I've never heard it because we do a lot of due diligence. This is what modern matchmaking is all about, is helping protect women and men from people who are predators, whether they're gold diggers or whatever. This is our job. And we're the ones doing all the vetting and all the things that you would have to do on your own. And that's why you're paying big money to work with someone who's actually doing that so that you feel more confident. I had a woman on my podcast who had given away over $1 million to a guy in Nigeria.
Oh my God.
And by the way, she met her now spouse through a matchmaker.
Oh, well, that's good. Jeez.
Yeah. So I really believe in this industry, and this is why I train for this industry. And this is why I believe now more than ever with this loneliness epidemic that matchmakers are uniquely poised to really bridge the gap, because the woman I mentioned who got married for the first time at the age of 60, she didn't want to go on a second date with the man that I introduced to her. And I was able to get her out of her own way because I was liaising the relationship. Right. And now she's been married, I think, 10 years.
That's very important. There is so much vetting, and like we've talked, I've worked with a matchmaker before, and there's a lot of vetting that happens. I think it's also just a matter of like being the person who's going on the dates. And like you said, like, this woman that you were working with, like, didn't want to go on a second date. And it's a matter of like understanding like why, like what's going on with you that you're like, no, I don't want a second date. What old stories or old patterns are they still stuck in? And also, if the person that you're matching them with is a good person, it's like, trust me, I know this person's a good person. Yeah. And what unfolds after that is, the relationship and what that relationship's going to look like. But I agree with you. I mean, we do not need to talk about dating apps because that is a disaster and has been for years. But matchmaking, I think you're right. It is kind of perfect at this moment to really help people have a liaison to meet each other in a way that they're kind of almost chaperoned in a weird way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people don't like to hear this, but the reality is that arranged marriages last longer than when you're out there in the wild on your own. And it's because in places like India, for example, the parents are involved. They are checking for a bunch of variables and key life values that need to be aligned. And also people go into it with a specific mindset, which is one of the key pillars to a sustainable long-term marriage, is even having respect for the institution of marriage, right? Which was hard for me because I came from divorced parents. I grew up with a single mom, and you lose respect for what marriage is when you come from that background. So shifting that mindset and recognizing that this is an important thing for you, that you need to respect the marriage, you need to respect yourself, you need to respect your spouse, and you need to respect the combination of the two, the coming together. And I think in certain cultures, that's part of the formula that really helps to make it sustainable. And yes, of course, there are situations that don't work out or where there's abuse and stuff like that, that happen. But far more people stay married long term, which if you talk about Tim's book, right, going back to that, like evolutionary psychology didn't necessarily promote monogamy, right? So this is a construct that came through religion and our societies. And so this is kind of where we are today, but our Raz brain doesn't necessarily always agree with that. So it's also important when you're in a relationship to have discussions about what constitutes, cheating, for example, because as humans, you're going to find other people attractive. As a matter of fact, my husband and I have the kind of relationship that if a man walks in a room, or a woman, because I was a matchmaker and I was always looking for that, but even still, I'll be like, wow, she's gorgeous. Look at this woman. And he'll look, and he could enjoy looking at her. I'm not worried that he's leaving with her or anything like that. I have no reason to be jealous. And the same with him. When I was a matchmaker, we would go out. We would always sit at a bar to eat, never at the table. And, I would notice, oh, there's a really attractive man over there. He looks put together. He doesn't have a ring on. He's like, go get him. Because, because I'm like, hey, this is what I do. I'm not going to cheat on you. Right.
Yeah.
But anyway,
it almost is a weird way of taking like pressure off,
Absolutely. We're quirky as couples, we're not swingers or anything like that. We're 100% monogamous, but we don't have that kind of jealousy thing with it because we feel this confidence in our relationship and our closeness that I never worry that he's going to cheat on me, and he doesn't have to worry about that with me.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people can say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that trust is the thing that makes a relationship, a committed relationship, and you're right. Like, it is a choice to be monogamous, and some people are not built for that. They just aren't. You can get them to the altar and they're still just not going to be built for it. And others are absolutely wanting that. And I think too, going back to Tim's conversation, the thing that I kept thinking was like, yes, biology, but love. But love, not just the infatuation and falling in love, but long lasting love, respectful love, like companion love, where you love that person so much more than what you first fell in love with them as, but for who they are with you and as a couple. And to me, I mean, I have that with like incredibly long-term friendships of, decades. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of think that is the caveat to biology, is actual love.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, our society dictates it as well from a standpoint of the costs, of cheating, the hurt, the pain that you cause, etc. But there's also, right now I have a student who's going through my program, and she has a company that is for ethical non-monogamy. And these are people who have decided that, yes, I want to be married. Yes, I love my partner, but I also want the freedom to have other partners. And we are both in agreement on this. And one of the things that in fact, I just wrote an article about this, is that when you're a matchmaker, you can't be judgmental. You have to take yourself out of the equation and know that between consenting adults, it's none of your business. How they vote is none of your business. I mean, not that it's not your business to know for the sake of putting people together, but it shouldn't be an affront to you. Like, you have your own way of being. My clients, I'm a person of color. Almost all my clients were affluent white people. So if I was going to be upset if they said, well, I don't want to date any Black women or Latinas or whatever, then no, this is a preference. So when you go into matchmaking, you really have to white label yourself, so to speak. Like, don't go in with all your biases and all your opinions and all this. If you have, and this is why I stuck with the science and research, because if I gave advice, I could show you the studies that in the majority, this is the result in the majority. You still have a choice as a human being. Everyone has agency. So I'm not going to dictate to you how you're going to act. But if you're not having results and you're trusting me and my process, and I'm showing you the data, because most of my clients were really smart people. So you have to come, you have to bring
like that. We like data and citations. We want to know it's real.
Exactly. And so that's super important as a matchmaker. It's just not to have don't put yourself in the middle of it. I remember one time we were in a meeting of matchmakers and someone brought up something about women's weight. And it wasn't even said in a mean way or anything like that, but that is a barrier. Like, being short is a barrier. There's so many things that, most women don't want to date short men. I think short men are fabulous. And I did a whole article and video on the pluses. There's so many benefits to dating short men. But anyway,
I love it.
This one matchmaker was very upset because she herself was a full body woman and was upset about whatever comment. I'm like, get yourself out of the equation. This is not about you. Yeah. We're trying to have conversations among practitioners about how to handle certain situations. If you're that sensitive, you shouldn't be a matchmaker. People ask me, what do I need? What's my criteria to be a matchmaker? Don't, have thin skin. If you have thin skin, go over there, because this is not going to be for you, because you're dealing with emotional people who have struggled and want to have success. And when they don't, or they have disappointments, they're going to lash out, and you need to, de-escalate the situation, not be defensive and not, wrong them for the situation.
Right.
So it's a tricky industry, and people don't see it as a professional industry, but the people who are doing great work are super professional, and they know what they're doing.
They are. And I love that when we talked before, you've said this during this episode, that the people who go into matchmaking are, therapists, they're counselors, they're former lawyers, or, people who are typically around other people and, like human behavior or like people. But to your point with having bias like that, I think that's a very important point because, well, like I'm a therapist, right? Like I work on my bias all the time because I have to let it go. I have to take myself out of it because, excuse me, if I have a client, it's still early here in LA. If I have a client who thinks very, very differently than me, it's not part of my job to change their minds. It's really not. It's about, why do you think that way? And why does that work for you? So if someone does like a certain type of body type or skin color or profession or whatever it is, that's what they want. And as a matchmaker, I would imagine you're just like, okay, let's figure out how to find that for you and see if that works for you. But yeah, I'm not supposed to change anyone as a therapist. You're not supposed to change anyone as a matchmaker, I would imagine.
No, I think that you can help them put their best foot forward, and you can point out the disconnect. Mm-hmm. So if you're walking around dressed in goth, attire, and that's your thing, great.
Yeah.
Are you likely, and okay, and let's just say this is a female with that style, and she wants to meet a finance guy on Wall Street. It's not impossible. Nothing's impossible. Things are just absurd until they occur, right? But the challenge will be that a man who is on Wall Street typically will be wearing suits most of the time. He'll be invited to events where he has to, present himself in a certain way. And chances are he's not going to bring or pick up or choose a partner who has that style. There's nothing wrong with your style, but how realistic is it is my point.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, I would say there are always snowflakes and unicorns. But if I were a matchmaker and someone presented that way and that's what they were looking for, I would refrain from taking that client and refer them to someone who I think could better help them. That's what an ethical matchmaker would do, because I don't want blood money. And I know that it would be hard for me to help this person. I'm going to waste their time and money. And so that we do as matchmakers is just point out the things that are like weird dichotomies that are not likely, that are going to be really difficult. And again, if I'm not capable, for example, if I don't have a database where I can support the LGBTQ community, then I would have a partner that I can send people to so that they're fully supported. And also just even having cultural competency. Forget the bias. What if I don't know how Black people are versus African people? Because an African American and an African from Africa have very different cultures. If I don't have that cultural competency to support them, then I would send them to a matchmaker who does. And this is why I'm a big proponent in my school to help people niche down to where they have that competency of the people that they're working with. And then they have partners that they can send people to when they're not equipped to give them the support, whether they don't have the database or the access or the avenue to the people that your client is looking for. And yeah, so it's a very, very intricate career. And it's a shame that people don't realize that, and they just put up a website, decide to be a matchmaker, put up a website and start working. And then they start struggling and they start breaking laws, because there are a lot of laws and regulations that impact our industry that a lot of people are not aware of. Even old school matchmakers, I see them make mistakes all the time. And I'm like, wow,
Well, I'm very glad that you have, in fact, what is your school called? This will all be in the show notes, but if people are interested and they're like listening, thinking, I've always wanted to be a matchmaker, or I would like to know more about how to become one, tell us a little bit about your school.
Yeah, so it's the lovepromastermind.com, and it's the Love Pro Mastermind Academy. I started just doing masterminds for existing matchmakers to help them elevate their businesses. And now we've expanded to bring in new clients that are just want to become matchmakers and have no background in it. And what differentiates us from other schools, because I was the CEO of another school that's been around for 20 years. I've known other schools in Europe and different places. What I wanted to do differently was to help people. First of all, it's a live done with you type training. Mm-hmm. So when you come to this, you are learning, implementing. We have an accountability to look at what you've implemented. We give you feedback. And so by the time, if you're a newbie, between day 1 and 6 months, you've already put your company together in the right way without violating any laws. And from 6 months to a year, because it's a 1-year program, there's nobody else with a 1-year program, because people need that support.
Yeah.
6 months to a year, you are working with clients. You win back the money that you invest, but you're working with clients and you have that full support, and you're still learning and you're still training, because I do believe in always be learning. Yes. I am a fanatic about constantly learning, reading studies, doing webinars or whatever, taking courses. I've spent so much money in my education because everything changes. And I'm seeing it with the dating world. All of the way I dated when I was young, that doesn't exist anymore. So if you don't follow the trends and you don't keep up and you're in an industry, it's like going to a doctor that gets his doctorate and doesn't continue to learn, which, by the way, they don't exist because they have required CME, continuing medical education, same with your industry. Mm-hmm. Well, coming from pharma, I felt like, you know what? I want to create something where matchmakers are required to continue to learn. Mm-hmm. That is a requirement. So in our school, we consistently bring new topics, new information, things that are not necessarily on their radar, so that they're always learning and staying up on the latest trends.
I love that. That sounds like a very nurturing environment, especially for someone who is just getting into matchmaking. But even if they're not, it's just, you have support, you have a community, it sounds like, and you're constantly learning. Arlene, you are just so lovely. I feel like there was so much gold in this conversation for so many people listening. Please tell people how they can find you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just been a pleasure. I think I can talk to you for hours, but I'm on all social media at Arlene Washburn. And if you want to check out the school or even schedule a call to learn more about this process, go to lovepromastermind.com and you'll be able to schedule a call.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Come back anytime. We can talk about all the things anytime. But thank you so much.
Thank you.